Okay, we've got like 40, 39 of you. So if there are no questions, we'll start. Yeah. Yes. Hold on. So we were here teaching grammar as process. Okay. And I think, we went through all this. Okay. We went through all this, the fact that this teaching grammar as process is like, the task. Yeah. The focus is on use. Okay. And what you do is you regulate certain things, you bring in things that you normally find in normal conversations or some, normal language use, and you regulate it. Okay. So I think we were somewhere, these are all examples of regulating time pressure. We talked about that also. Examples, okay. Regulating topic and familiarity. Yeah. So, and these were some examples also. This is, we were talking about context gap. Yeah. That what we need to do is to actually ensure that there is a gap. Yeah? Because normally, if everybody knows everything, then we don't want to say, there's no that there doesn't seem to be a real reason to convey the message because they already know what the message is. Okay, so this I think is a good example of a context gap activity because there are many different options. Yeah, for a student to tell his story. He can start with number 1, he can start with number 6, he can start with number 4, he can even start with number 3 or number 2 or whatever. Okay, so the listener, the other students won't know, right? So there is a context gap. Yeah. Although they do have this that they share the pictures, but the story itself they won't know. So this gives the person who tells the story a reason to make things clear to the to his friends or her friends. Yeah, because they don't know what kind of a story he's going to tell. Okay. So this is also actually kind of like similar, yeah, because it's got all these little things, and there's a few. I mean, there's choice for the learners with respect to how they want to tell the story or how they want to, solve a problem or something like that. Okay. So we also looked at the difference between. Oh, this is where we stopped, I think. Yeah, I think this is where we stopped. Okay. And there is a difference between gap activities in product and process teaching. Okay. In product teaching, information gaps are used also, right? Because information gap activities are really very useful. Okay. But with product teaching, in the information gap activity, the teacher knows the answer. Okay. It could be like one person has some information, his classmate does not, but the teacher knows what the answer is. Okay. In process teaching, this may not necessarily be the case. Okay. If you go back to this, you'll find that even the teacher won't know how the student is going to tell the story, right? But if it is product teaching, then you're going to structure it in such a way that the teacher will know how how the story is going to be told. Yeah. Although the student's classmate may not, but the teacher will know. Okay. So that's a major difference between product and process teaching, because in product teaching, there's still a lot of control that the teacher has, whereas in process teaching, it's kind of letting go. Okay. So when you let go, we want, to help our learners to make their own meanings clear. So we don't know what they're going to say, right? or giving them a lot of leeway, we're giving them a lot of flexibility in what they want to say. Okay, so because of that, we also hope that they will express their meanings clearly. Okay, and to do that, they have to use grammar. They have to grammaticize. Okay, so process task creates a partial or incomplete context, for example, problem to solve, an argument to conclude. Okay, so this is also process task. Yeah. What the teacher has to do is to decide what is unclear or unavailable in the task, right? So here, what's unclear is the story. Okay, we don't know what the story is, right? So the narrative, yeah. So it's here where the uh, teacher has some control. The teacher has some, it's not like you just let them go on their own. But here the teacher knows that these are the 6 pictures or drawings that the students have to use. Okay, but how the drawings are being used, teacher does not know. Okay, so where are we? Yeah. So this is what the teacher has to do. Has to decide on what exactly is unclear in the task, what is unavailable in the task. Yeah. And also, teacher's task is deciding how the learners can be motivated to discover and share this information. Okay, so I mentioned this earlier. This kinds of tasks, sometimes if it's just too difficult, okay, or even this kind of task, yeah, if it's too difficult, you look at it, you're not interested, okay, as a student, okay. So if that happens, then it's not going to work because they're not going to put in any effort because they're not motivated, yeah, to do it. So teacher has to think of how to motivate. So the teacher has to think of how to motivate or encourage the students to participate or complete this activity which has a gap, information gap. Okay, so that's one of the other roles of the teacher. Okay, so this is another context gap. World creating and reasoning. Of course, if you think of an opinion or an argument or a debate, of course, we don't know what the other person is going to say, right? Yeah. So that's a context gap also. Yeah. And of course, because we don't know what they're going to say, there's nothing being shared. The person who wants to say it will have to say it very clearly so that people will understand what they're trying to say. Okay. So this is also process teaching. Of course, this is a very kind of like a rather high level because we're expecting the students to kind of express their own opinions and things like that. But this is what we have to try to get our students to do eventually because they're learning to use the language and the best form, maybe the topmost ability in using the language is to express an opinion. Okay, if you can express an opinion in any language, then you're really good at the language. If you're learning Thai or learning French, and you can express an opinion, a real opinion that really means something to you, okay, then it's perfect. You know how to use that language. Okay, if the only thing that you can use or do with that language is to say good morning, how are you, then you have not really mastered it. Okay, only just the basic aspects of it. Okay, so as far as possible, you have to help our students to reach this level. Of course, reaching this level also sometimes reasoning, meaning making. There are you can think of little steps, yeah, that can also lead towards this. Maybe meaning making in terms of single phrases, short phrases, and later on, more with elaboration, etc. Okay. Of course, some students may feel uncomfortable in disputing with others. Yeah, this is very cultural, and also we don't want to be, uh, impolite and rude to people. Okay, but sometimes it's important, yeah, because you may come across something that you feel is wrong, and you want to correct it. You don't have the language to do it, then you can't do anything. But if you have the language to do it and it's appropriate, then you can express your opinion. Okay, so this encouraging positive traits. When you have debates or arguments or expressing opinions, for me, actually, the way you do it, of course, is very important. But this, to me, actually is a positive trait. You can actually, express your opinion, or maybe if you really disagree to something and it's really really very important, and you want to disagree and say why. That is, to me, a positive trait. Yeah, rather than you just don't say anything and then you get very upset. Okay, yeah, so it is actually a positive trait to share different opinions. Okay, and this is once again the going back to the issue of interlanguage stretching. Okay, you're operating at the outer limits of your current abilities. Okay, so we kind of like have to kind of like challenge our students a little bit, so that they go a little bit beyond their comfort zone, okay, in using the language. Yeah, so of course, teachers will have to be very sensitive. Yeah, you don't want to force them and at the end get uh, negative kind of response. Yeah, suddenly they don't want to come to class, or suddenly they don't want to speak or something like that. Okay, that's not what we want, right? So the teacher has to be sensitive to their students, right? Okay, so these are just some activities you can take a look. This is problem solving actually. Okay, problem solving. So this is a situation. Jill, right? Lives in London, etc., etc. Good friend in San Francisco. Time difference, etc. Okay, so what time would be best for Gail to phone her friend? Okay, write down the time and decide on and your reason for choosing it. So it's not just um, giving what they think is the right answer, but also providing a reason. Okay, so if we have the opportunity to ask our students to give reasons, and if we think that our students are able to do it, or at that level to be able to do it, then we should take that opportunity and ask them for reasons. Okay, so that our lesson is not just what's right, what's wrong, but maybe there's a reason. We can listen to the reason as well. Okay. Yeah, so this is also another activity, and this is kind of interesting also. uh, Write down 3 things you hate doing. For example, swimming underwater. In groups, exchange lists and select one item from the list you are given. Pair up with the person who wrote it. Imagine the situation and try to persuade him or her to do the thing they hate doing. You are his or her friend, right? So this is in some ways also giving an opinion, right? There is a gap, yeah, in a sense, because the person doesn't like something, so you're trying to convince him, okay, to do something by giving certain reasons. This is word creating and reasoning, right? So this is of course something that cannot just be given to students if they're not ready for it, right? Okay, you may think of maybe providing some assistance in terms of allowing them to prepare, okay, the kinds of questions that they want to ask. Or you can, if they're much better, you can just let them go and do it on their own, right? But and you can also, if you want, provide words, keywords, phrases, etc., etc., for them to use when they want to try to convince their friends. Okay, so in some ways also you can kind of introduce certain grammar points as you do this. Yeah. So this is the second option. Or write down 3 objects you can never imagine yourself buying. For example, a spacesuit. In groups, exchange lists. Select one item from the list you are given. Pair up with the person who wrote it. Imagine the situation and try to persuade him or her to buy the object they do not want. Okay, you have a large stock. Yeah. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah. And this is 1987. Yeah? This is 1987. A long time ago. Yeah. More than 20 years. Okay. More than 30 years. Right. And these are the kinds of activities that we can actually do. And there is a rationale behind it. Okay. Which makes it even more, justified if the teacher wants to use it. Okay, it is very important to have a rationale behind the kinds of activities that you choose. Okay, why are you doing it as a teacher? Okay, so any questions at this point? What do you think? Any comments? You think it'll work? This kinds of activities? You think it's too difficult?
I think it will work.
Mhm. I mean, will it work for everybody? Will it work for only certain kinds of people, certain kinds of classes?
Maybe not everybody.
Okay. Who won't it work with? Who do you think it won't work with? The weaker student.
Those who are introverts, they don't talk much, so they don't
Yeah,
know how to persuade much.
okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe, I mean, as teachers, as educationists, you know all these things about introverts and extroverts and things like that, right? Okay. So maybe your lesson will have to cater for the differences in personality, yeah, personality types. So introverts, maybe you don't want to get them to speak. Maybe you want to get them to write, yeah, and and then they can exchange notes, yeah, something like that, right? And at the end of the lesson, you can, if you want, read out some of the notes, whether the introvert will read it out or maybe you as the teacher will read it out. Okay, and even for weaker students, uh, I know that maybe this may not work because it's really quite challenging, right? But maybe if you have one or two simpler types of activities of a similar nature, at least they will see that, oh, okay, I can see that learning a language is to do, is meant for doing all these kinds of things. So it's not, learning a language doesn't become so objective, like right, wrong, what is the answer, etc., etc. It's more like wanting to express themselves. Okay. Anything else? I have a box over Chen Yin. The yellow box is over Chen Yin. Do you want to say anything? But your microphone is off. Yeah. So I guess not. Okay. So we go back to the presentation. Yeah. And this is a review, process teaching in review. Spontaneous expression is demanding. Just talked about it. Okay. But at the same time, we need to be clear, relevant, accurate, effective listener and speaker, and also a sensitive turn taker. Yeah. So these are also things that we need to, as a teacher, and also as students, yeah, as a user of the language. So these are probably things that we also need to um, uh, you know help our students develop. So in process teaching, what we do is we subtly, that means It's not so obvious, but that's what we do. We regulate some of these factors. Okay, some of these factors that will be important in language use. Okay, and also that you will find in normal conversation. Okay. Also, as I mentioned several times, we need to observe as students perform. Okay, was there too much pressure? Okay, because we don't want a negative end result, right? We don't want for them to be suddenly too scared to enter the class, or too uncomfortable, or too much pressure, and whatever lah, the result will be negative. Okay, and they just sit there quietly and then just look at you and don't say anything. Okay, did they have too little to say? Kind of like, we have to be there always to kind of like probe. Okay, to maybe get them to give them a little bit more opportunity to speak a little bit more. Okay, help them think in terms of what else can be said. Okay, and also they look uncomfortable. Okay, so we have to, as teachers, we have to be aware of all these things. Yeah, we're not a bulldozer running through. Okay, the lessons, regardless of how the students respond. Okay, we have to be more sensitive to how they are responding, because we're trying to teach them and trying to help them out. Okay, and this is also part of the review. Forms of regulation, regulating time pressure. Okay, planning or performance time. Okay, if you remember, some situations we can allow them to plan what they want to say or what they want to write or whatever, how they want to respond. And performance time, meaning to say how much time do they have to respond, to perform. Okay, and also Di Pietro's strategic interaction. If you remember, you can take a look at the earlier slides. That is also something that can be used as a technique. Okay, so regulating topic and familiarity, right? This is also something that we can consider. Things that are familiar, it may have an effect on the time. Uh, things that we are familiar with, less time maybe, and so on and so forth. Okay, and regulating shared knowledge, context gaps, many examples also given. Yeah. So well, these are I don't really want to talk about this, but these are other examples. They're longer examples. Okay, you can take a look at it if you want, and look at whether you think there is some regulating going on, and whether or not you think that this will lead to process use of the language. Okay, and uh, mm, because maybe they take a lot of time to build up the situation, and the activities are later on. Okay, and you can see the kind of regulating and the gaps that are found there. Okay, so I don't have a slide at the end of this. This is the last slide. But if I were to highlight process teaching, like I highlighted product teaching, the concepts that are in process teaching are regulating, okay, and also uh, gaps, right? Gaps, different kinds of gaps, okay, information gaps, yeah. So these are among the process, the concepts that are in process teaching. Okay, so so we're done with teaching grammar as product. We're done with teaching grammar as process. And now what I will do is I will look at the last approach, which is teaching grammar as skill, which I uploaded only maybe a few hours ago. Okay, so this is teaching grammar as skill. Okay. Any comments? Anything to say? Oh, by the way, I'm still marking your part B. 48 of you, so kind of slow, especially during Ramadan. But I'll get there lah. Hopefully, inshallah, by the end of the week, I've already marked like say 20, 25 or something. There's another 20 to grade. Yeah. So once I get that, I'll put it up on SMP and you can see, I guess, 3 scores. Yeah. Okay. So, so now this is the last of the 3 approaches. Okay. But if you put it in you know, in a diagram, this may be the second. Okay. Because the first is teaching grammar as product. The last is teaching grammar as process, because teaching grammar as process is the most demanding, the most challenging. Okay, so teaching grammar as skill. Okay, let's take a look at this slide first. Teaching grammar as product, emphasis is on the form with aspects on natural communication, controlled form. Okay, so when it's controlled, that means it's not really there. It's not really there. Okay, you know, like for example, time, we try to do away with it, okay, and many other aspects of natural communication, because we want to focus on the form, you know, focus on the structure, on the form. Okay, teaching grammar has process, emphasis is on the use with aspects of natural communication, carefully introduced or regulated. Okay, so time, for example, we regulate it, maybe, you know, not much time or a lot of time, depending on the situation and so on and so forth. You know, so this is regulating aspects of natural communication. Okay, and in natural communication also sometimes we talk about things that we are not very familiar with. Okay, so we can also regulate familiarity and also topic. Yeah. So what does teaching grammar as skill offer? It offers an emphasis on developing student ability to bridge form to use, bridging this and this. That's why I said that teaching grammar as skill is as if it comes second, okay, in a diagram. Okay, but it can happen anytime. Yeah. Okay. So form is you got structure. You know the structure now, you know the form now. Okay, product. Yeah. So now with skill, you want to move from the form to the use. Okay. And in order to move from form to use, you have to have you have to develop certain abilities or certain skills. Okay. So that's the emphasis lah, the focus of what teaching grammar as skill is doing. Okay. So these are some strategies in teaching grammar as a skill. So these are strategies in when you teach the students. Okay, number one is noticing as a skill. Number two is teaching grammar as grammaticization. And number three is reflection. Okay, 3 things, 3 strategies. The first one is noticing as a skill. So in teaching grammar as product, noticing happens, right? If you remember the you know, the diagram, in teaching grammar as product, noticing for, noticing by, structuring for, structuring by, right? But in teaching grammar as product, noticing is with disconnected sentences. Okay, so it's kind of like we try to control the text, don't make it too long or don't make it too, you know, too much information. We try to focus a little bit. We try to control the text because our intention is for them to notice the grammar points. Maybe we put the grammar the same structure many times in the text. Okay, and we control that. It makes the text maybe not so natural, but that's what we're trying to do. We're controlling it so that they can notice the forms. Okay, but in teaching grammar as skill, noticing is grammar in context. That means you have to notice as you listen to text, if it's listening, that is not controlled by the teacher. Okay, so they have to kind of like notice on their own. Okay, we are not manipulating or modifying the text so that there are more past tense forms, so that because we want to teach past tense forms, so we put in all the past tense forms. Okay, we change the text. No, this here in noticing as a skill, it has to be you know, in normal kind of conversations. Okay, so learners are given tasks that require top-down processing, yeah, which is normal, which is what we normally do, because we normally go for meaning, we go for top-down processing, but at the same time, ask to notice the grammar. Okay, this seems very abstract, but this is an example of it. Okay, can you read it? It gives me some time to stop talking. Can you read on your own? Yeah. Okay. So this is the text. Hold on, yeah. Hold on for a while. Okay, sorry. That was from the university, so I had to answer. I didn't know whether it was important or not. Okay, so anyway, this is an example of what we're doing here. Yeah, learners are given tasks that require top-down processing, but at the same time asked to notice the grammar. Okay, so kind of like, you have to kind of like do top-down processing here to kind of like understand what's going on, right? So you have an idea of this is a conversation between Bill and Jerry.
Doctor,
Yes.
what is top down? I forgot what it is. Is it like we scan the information?
Okay, top down is like this. It's either top down or bottom up. Okay, so if it is top down, that means you are kind of like getting the gist of getting the summary or getting the general idea of what it is, of what the conversation is. Okay, and normally that's what we do when we talk to people. Okay, in conversations they may be speaking a lot. We kind of like get the gist, right? We don't pay attention to what he says word for word. Okay, because we're thinking in terms of what is he trying to say, what is his meaning. That's top down. Okay, that is opposed to bottom up. Bottom up is you're looking at one word at a time and trying to analyze what he means by looking at each word. Okay, and we don't normally in conversations we don't do that. Okay, we go top down. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, So this is reading. This is, you will also be introduced to it in reading, teaching of reading. Okay, so normally we have to do top down. Yeah. So here we're trying to understand what he's trying to say top down. Okay. General overall understanding. Okay, but if it is noticing as a skill, you want to also do it in such a way that, you know, they notice the grammar. Okay, so this is the task that comes together with this. Okay, so the task is Jane applies for a job. Has it happened and finished? Is it still going on? Is it something that's going to happen in the future? Okay, so yeah, you should be able to answer this. Yeah,
Happen and finish.
happen and finish. Okay, how do you know that?
Because she said I didn't get the
I didn't get the job I applied for, right? Okay, so she applied, okay, and she didn't get it, okay. So it's kind of like, you know, these things are all important information, but we understand it from the information or the way it is spoken in this little short conversation. Okay, so it's kind of like when you do this happen and finish, and then the students tick here. Okay, and the teacher can go on, and if the teacher wants to describe that all things that have happened and finished, let's take a look at what was said. This is all in the past tense, simple past tense. I did not, right? Did not. Okay, and so on. Jane's cat's strange habit. Okay.
Still
going
going
on.
on.
Yeah. Okay, still going on, right? Still going on. Okay, how do we know? Started eating the carpet again. Okay, eating, right? And so on. So in other words, okay, let's just finish this up. Jane studies at the U.
Future.
Right, future. Jane and sister spend time together. Okay,
Going on.
going on, right?
Future.
Going on.
Going on.
Yeah.
Right.
We both are going to study at the university, so we are spending a lot of time together. Okay, so when you fill this in, okay, you will find that still going on, we'll have eating, started eating the carpet. This one has got are studying together, you know, and then you can discuss this and you can discuss this if you want to. Okay, so but this is a skill that the student actually develops, because he is kind of like, oh, okay, now I understand. This is, you know, this means that it's in the past. This means that it's going on. This means that, you know, the sister arrived. That means this happened in the past. Okay, and so on and so forth. So it's a skill. It's an ability that you are trying to develop amongst your students. Okay, so this is noticing as a skill. Yeah, they notice the grammar and what it expresses, and they develop it as a skill. Okay, so activity noticing is done within a context and not with isolated disconnected sentences, as in teaching grammar as product. Okay, so you know, isolated, you know what it means, right? It's out of context, you know, it's on its own. Yeah, disconnected, same thing, it's not, you know, connected to another sentence. Although of course when you want to teach grammar as product, you can still have connected sentences, it's okay. But you know, slightly different. Teaching grammar has noticing as a skill. You're trying to develop that skill. Okay, and teaching grammar as product. Okay, so it's more authentic and realistic. Yeah, this is more authentic and more realistic. Okay, all the language used is more kind of like, you know, normal realistic kind of language. Okay, requires students to have a fairly good grasp of grammar. Okay, so in other words, they have to have an idea of you know, the grammar, in order to make this comprehensible to them. This input has to be comprehensible. They have to know it. If they don't know how to, if they cannot comprehend this, they can't do anything. Okay, they have to comprehend this. You know, they have to be able to make sense of this. Okay, and then they can go and go deeper and look at the individual parts. Okay, so that's noticing as a skill. Yeah, and that's part of teaching grammar as a skill. So in other words, you know, we don't just help our students to say this is right, that is wrong, this is the reason why it's right, this is the reason why it's wrong, but we need to help develop certain kinds of skills. Okay, this is a second strategy or second skill. It's called teaching grammar as grammaticization. Okay, remember grammaticize. Okay, that means you use grammar to express yourself. Okay, to express yourself clearly. So it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. Okay, but just slightly different because it's a teaching approach here. Okay, teaching strategy here. Okay, so the general trend is from lexis to grammar. Okay, lexis meaning to say words. Okay, the general trend when we learn a second language or foreign language, we look at the words first. Okay, but teaching sometimes is from grammar to lexis. You know, teaching sometimes they focus on the grammar and then only maybe put in new words. Of course, they have to introduce some words first. Okay. Uh, so the suggestion here is instead of giving learners the grammar, give them the words instead. Okay. And let them make sense of the words in order to come up with a sentence. Okay. Like this. Yeah. Arrive, Ali, leave, city. Okay. So there is a contextual void. The students need to make sense of these words and form something. Okay. What would you use? What sentence would you construct based on what words you already know or what you have of the language? Arrive, Ali, leave, city. Can you come up with a sentence based on the 4 words?
Ali arrived when city leaves.
Yeah, okay. Ali arrives when city leaves. Okay, so you have to put in all the inflections, right? You cannot say Ali arrived, city leave, right? You have to put in all the inflections because you know, right? The inflections. Ali singular, so arrive has to have an S. City singular, and leave has to have an S, right? You can also make Ali arrives, so city left, right? You can put in a conjunction. You can put in when Ali arrived, city left. Yeah, you can put a time, word there. Okay, and so on and so forth. You can have many different constructions, right? Okay, so to challenge the student a little bit, okay, and to get them to think how they should construct this sentence, you need to provide cues. For example, situation 1, you know that Siti doesn't like Ali. So you would say something like, Ali arrived, so Siti left. Yeah. So there's a meaning to it, right? There's meaning to it. You're not just, putting the words together for the sake of putting the words together any way you want, but you have to put it in such a way that it reflects the situation. Okay, so this is developing their skills. Yeah, developing their skills to realize that the best combination of the 4 words in this kind of a situation could be something like this. Ali arrived, so Siti left. Of course, you can say Ali arrived, but because Siti does not like Ali, Siti left. Of course, you can say that. Yeah, but you can say it in a more concise manner by just saying Ali arrived, so Siti left. Okay, so they need to understand the situation. Similarly, number two, Ali and Siti are good friends, but Siti has a prior engagement. So Ali arrived, but Siti had to leave. Okay, it shows that she doesn't want to leave, right? But she had to leave. Okay, so once again, this is grammaticization. They have to use grammar to clearly express the situation. Okay, do you get what I'm saying? Yes, no, asleep?
No.
No, okay. But somebody did say yes. You want to try to help me explain?
It's okay, doctor. You can
Okay,
explain.
Hakiba. Okay. Okay, Hakiba, yeah. I thought you were going to help explain. Okay, once again, yeah. These are 4 words, right? You can, if you don't have any situation, okay, you can, if you don't have any situation, you can come up with any kind of sentence that you want, right? Using these 4 words. You can have Ali left when Siti arrived. You know, you can have Siti arrived when Ali left, and etc. etc. But if you provide a cue or a situation, then you have to think in terms of how to express this situation using these 4 words. Okay, so you have to use the grammar to do that. Okay, you have to use the grammar to do that. That's where grammaticization, grammaticization, okay, not grammatization, grammaticization, okay. Grammaticization, okay, that's where grammaticization occurs, yeah, because you have to insert, you have to use the grammar in order to, you have to use the grammar correctly in order to express the situation. If you say Ali arrived but Siti left, okay, it doesn't express this situation, although the sentence is correct. Okay, even you can even say Ali arrived but Siti had to leave, doesn't express this situation. Okay, but the sentence is correct. Okay, so you have to grammaticize, yeah, first to use the grammar, and you have to grammaticize correctly. You have to grammaticize, really use the correct words that, in order to express this situation. Okay, so there's thinking involved, yeah, and this is a skill once again that we have to help our students develop. Okay, they need to understand the situation and how best to use the grammar to express what needs to be expressed. Okay, so situation 1, situation 2, right? So grammaticization is the need to use correct grammar or to be careful of using correct grammar in order to get your intended message across clearly. Okay, so this message is this: Ali arrived but Siti had to leave. This is the message. Okay, Ali and Siti are friends. They don't have to be don't have to say good friends, but they are friends. They could be good friends. But Siti has something on. She has to do something. Okay, Ali arrived, but Siti had to leave. Yeah. So this is what's happening. You express your message, intended message, clearly. Okay. Is that okay? Clear to everyone?
Clear, doctor. Okay.
Okay. So number 3, as a strategy to develop skill, okay, is reflection. Okay, this is actually good, but very seldom teachers use it. Maybe because they don't have time, or maybe because they're more focused on just their teaching. Okay, and reflection comes from the part of the students, and maybe the teachers, once they do their teaching, they feel, oh, no need lah to. I mean, they just feel that they're done, and they don't do that one extra step where they try to get their students to reflect. Sometimes, even if you ask your students to reflect, they won't do it. Okay, so they get, teachers just don't want to do it lah, because the students don't want to do it. Okay, so with process teaching, sometimes students don't get that teaching and learning has occurred. Okay, so if you recall process teaching, it's getting to use the language, right? So when the students use the language, sometimes they feel like, what's the teacher doing? Teacher's not teaching us anything. Okay, we're using the language. We know we are the ones who are speaking and using the language. Teacher's not doing anything. But actually, the teacher has done a lot of things. The teacher has prepared the task carefully, has thought about what exactly the students need to use, okay, in order to complete the task, and so on and so forth. Okay, but sometimes the students don't get to see teaching happening, because to many of them, teaching means the teacher telling them what to do or what is right and what is wrong. Okay, but teacher has facilitators. They don't necessarily have to do that nowadays. Okay, but they have to plan a very good lesson so that learning happens. Okay, so with process teaching, sometimes students don't get that teaching has occurred, yeah, and learning has occurred. In order for effective teaching and learning, students should be taught regarding the need to reflect. Okay, an appropriate stage in the classroom to do some reflection is post-task stage. Okay, post-task stage is after they have done the task, after they have completed the task. Like, let's say this one. Okay, so this is where, after they have completed everything, okay, and then the teacher can say, okay, I want you to think about the answers that you gave. Why did you give them? What in the conversation tells you, what is the correct, what is, why you answered that way, and so on and so forth. So this is post task. That's the best time to do the reflection. Okay. Okay, so appropriate stage in the classroom to do some reflection is the post-task stage. And this is, just a nice little image. Okay, reflection. Looking back so that the view looking forward is even clearer. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. So what to reflect on? These are the things that students can reflect on, and they can be taught to reflect on. Yeah. Reflect on the quality of language they are using. Yeah, appraising strengths and weaknesses. So if we develop this skill or ability of doing this, in language learning lessons, then there is a possibility that the students will be improving in leaps and bounds, because they reflect on the quality of their own language that they are using. Okay, not after the lesson is done, everything is finished. Okay, and then they come in for the next lesson. They listen, and then when it's done, it's finished. Okay, they forget everything, or they don't think about what happened. But if we can develop a habit of reflecting, okay, on the quality of the language they are using, okay, praising their strengths and weaknesses, what's right, how they said things correctly, how they said things poorly, okay, then maybe they can improve faster. Okay, I remember when I was much younger as a school student, one of the things that my parents told me, every time you come back from school, you revise. Okay, revising is like reflecting also. Of course, sometimes I followed their advice, sometimes I did not. Okay, uh, because there were, to me, more important things to do. But if we can make this into some sort of a habit, okay, reflect on the quality of language they are using, yeah, then it's going to improve them. Okay, critically reflect, compare what has been said and what could have been said. Not every student will be able or willing to get to this stage where they critically reflect in terms of language use. But if they really want to learn the language, if we can really encourage and motivate them to say that the language is so important and they should be learning it, okay, maybe they can come to a stage where they can actually compare what they said and what they could have said, okay, how they could have said it better, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is reflection also. This is a skill, right? An ability that they want to develop. And there are, of course, practical constraints, for reflection that we have to also take into consideration. Yeah, pressure for students to assess their work. Okay, therefore we must provide non-threatening context. Perhaps say that reflection is something that uh, you know uh, helps them, and it's not something to make them feel bad about what they said or how they said things. Okay, it's a way to improve themselves. Okay, examples of reflection in action: option 1, option 2, option 3, and option 4. Can we get Ikwan to read option 1, please?
Option 1. After you have finished your dialogue, try to remember some of the things you said. How did you express some of your points? How well do you think you expressed them?
Okay, so that's option 1. Nakibah, can you read option 2?
Record your dialogue. When finished, listen to what you said and discuss the language you use. Which points are you happy with? And which do you think you could improve? Think practically about expression you use to persuade the other person.
Okay, so this is kind of like, athletes do this a lot. Yeah, they record their performance, right? They videotape their own performance, their running, the way they run, etc., etc. Their coaches also do that, and they watch on their own. Maybe the hand motion is not correct. They don't use their hands to move faster or something like that. So it can also be done in language learning. So Yasin, can you please read the next one, option 3?
Set dialogue, work with your partner, and make brief notes of what each of
Oh,
you.
not. We can't hear you that much. Thank you, Yasin. I'll move to somebody else. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Uh, how about Anis, Shazwin?
Yes,
Can you read
Doctor.
option 3, please?
Option 3. Before you start your dialogue, work with your partner and make brief notes of what each of you might say. Check your plan with the teacher, then pass it over to another pair of students. Afterwards, discuss and compare what you actually say.
Okay. So this is another possibility, right? Where you actually, do an analysis lah in some way, a reflection of what you said. But in this case, there are other people involved as well. Okay. Anybody else wants to read option 4?
I
Yeah,
can
Okay, go ahead.
work in groups of four as one pair acts
Who's
out the
that?
role.
Who is that?
Easian,
Who's
easian,
speaking? Hmm?
easian.
Izian. Okay.
Yes. Works in groups of four as one pair acts out the role play. The other pair listens for how verbs are used. When both pairs have finished, discuss what you did well and what you would like to improve. Report your summary to the class and to the teacher.
Yeah. So this is also something that can be done. Yeah. And they're using their peers. Yeah. Their other classmates to help on the reflection. Okay, hopefully nobody starts an argument or something like that. Okay, not don't criticize each other too much. Yeah, but maybe just give suggestions. So in a way, it also helps the students to understand how to give suggestions politely and appropriately. Yeah, okay. So when you have these kinds of things, yeah, sometimes we notice that sometimes people don't give suggestions in the correct way. Maybe because they don't have or they're afraid to do it in school, and then suddenly, they're expected to do it. They don't do it in the right way, but they do it, impolitely, not so politely lah. Yeah. But this is another example of reflection. Okay, so reflection, I think, is something that we should try to build into our lessons. Yeah, when we go out to teach later on. Okay, so we are basically at the end of teaching grammar has skill. So the three strategies that were given, noticing as a skill, I hope you can make the distinction between noticing in teaching grammar as product and noticing as a skill that we want to develop amongst our students. Okay, and teaching grammar has grammaticization. The idea is, once again, we want to help develop the skill of using the grammar to link up the words. Yeah, because people may have words, yeah, vocabulary, maybe they may have a lot of vocabulary, but we want to kind of like link it up using grammar, and at the same time to express the appropriate meaning, the intended meaning. Yeah. And finally, reflection. These are just skills that help develop, maybe, I won't say motivation, but maybe just develop maybe the ability to learn and maybe even acquire the language. Yeah. Okay, so these are some strategies. So we've looked at all three. Yeah, we've looked at all three. We've come to the end of Bedstone's approaches, and we've looked at all three. And I think that what I need to stress is that it's not one approach as opposed to the other approach. Okay, all three approaches can be done with the same set of students. Okay, so it's not like, oh, I'm a teaching grammar as product teacher. I don't do teaching grammar as skill. I don't do teaching grammar as use. Or I think teaching grammar as product is correct. The other two not correct. Okay, it's all three being interconnected. Okay, they're all interconnected, and it depends on the level of the students. Maybe teaching grammar as product, they're already okay with it, so you can focus a little bit more on use. Okay, teaching grammar as process. Okay, maybe they can do teaching grammar as process a little bit, but they don't have, they're always hanging on to you. They're always holding on to your hands, asking you, is this right? Is this, how I should do it? Okay, so we need to get them to let go. And this teaching grammar as skill is something that maybe we can also emphasize. And this can actually be done at any time together concurrently with teaching grammar as process, concurrently with teaching grammar as product. Okay, so basically that's it for today. Please remember, second assignment due end of week 8. Okay, and I will also try to put in the marks for the part B of your test by the end of this week, hopefully. Quite a number of things to do. Okay, but I'll try lah. I'll try to see what I can do. Okay. Okay, now everybody's getting ready to take their photos. I see Ikwan getting, for me, okay. Right, so, okay, attendance, I'm going to take attendance now. Hold on. Okay, page 1, yeah. And page 2. Oops, hold on. Sorry. Page 2. Okay, page 2. Control alternate print screen. Okay. Yeah, so I have your attendance. We're basically done, but if you have any questions, you can ask me now. Okay. If you don't have any questions, you can leave. Okay. And we are done lah basically for today. I'm not going to introduce anything new. If you want to leave, fine. I'll just kind of like stay here for a while. And if you have any questions, you can ask.
Right, Doctor. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank you,
welcome.
Doctor.
See you.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, bye.